Hello, guys.
Why does yours get to be pulling it down?
Because I don't have a stomach that I'm dealing with, so I can go in and out. You seem to be stationary. We're on week 2 of I Bring the Voices of My People by Dr. Chanequa Walker Byrne.
There we go. Dr. Chanequa Walker.
How are you guys doing? How was your week? What did you think of the inauguration? Can we give shout outs to Amanda Gordon and just the beautifulness of that day, right?
It was really pretty.
Just like what a wonderful day to celebrate and elevate Black voices, Black bodies,
women.
Black women in particular. That's just a powerful, powerful moment. So, wow, welcome to a new day. The start of new work as Americans. And we can take a deep breath. Let's just breathe in, breathe out together. Can we do that?
I saw someone post online, they didn't realize how much they were holding on to until Trump was flying away. And then they got sworn in. They said they literally broke down in tears.
Wow.
And I felt the same when I saw Vice President get sworn in, and then similarly with
Similarly
with Amanda saying her poem.
Yeah.
I started to cry because you just are like, oh my God,
Thank you, God.
thank you, God. I won't have to raise a child underneath tyranny.
That's real talk.
That's real talk.
Yeah.
We've been carrying a lot as people of color, as
Yeah.
minorities, as people on the fringes, on the outskirts of society for so long. And those people are not going away that did the insurrection, that all,
Right.
the corrupt cops.
They didn't fly away too.
Right. They didn't fly away too. But I think the blatant encouragement from the highest level of office in the land
Yeah.
is no longer.
Yeah.
So they don't have the fuel to the flame. They still gonna be flaming, but there's no fuel from the highest office.
Yeah.
Like, just think about the highest office of the land was
Yeah.
fueling them. Of course they were bold.
Yeah. Because
Anyway.
power was empowering them.
Right. And they are. So we'll get I think the book is very interesting to show to me where we talk about in this first bit of chapter 1.
Yeah.
Just my overarching thing was white people gonna white. And America wants so desperately to separate themselves from the disparities of racism in comparison to like Germany and Hitler. They want so badly not to be that, but they are. America is. And what's more dangerous is that it's a sub is. You know what I mean? Like, there hasn't been mass euthanasia, but there has with the gelling system. There hasn't been mass this, but there has with the way we do housing. And then, anyway, we can get into all of that.
Yeah.
But I think that just makes me so sad. And, also white people that, have there's the saying, ignorance is bliss. And I'm like, it must be bliss. And I think that's why so many people can live blissfully. If you're a white American that has been living blissfully, it's because you're steeped in ignorance. You have no idea what's happening around you, and that at this point is a choice. Anyway, go ahead.
She Black, she a woman, and she pregnant.
And I'm pregnant.
And she pregnant.
I'm about 9 months pregnant too.
Come on, Jesus. We're so glad you're here. Thank you for joining the conversation. Chapter 1
Or
is
the listening.
Pages 16 through 42, I believe, is what our reading was from this past time. And, with the book club, generally just starting out, I just like to know, like, what type of stuff stuck out to you as you read it? I know you've said some stuff already, but we'll just start commentating, bouncing ideas off of each other and whatnot. But the name of this chapter is Racism is Not About Feelings or Friendship.
I don't know if you have zoom in capabilities, but I put amen ! And then I just bubbled around feelings or friendship. It's people want to make it about that. It ain't about either of that.
Yeah.
I don't know that we really got to that part of it in this first section.
No, we're just starting chapter 1.
Right, that's what I mean. So we didn't even get to that
sentiment.
sentiment.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Which I'm really interested to get to.
This first chapter is long, so she is going to get to it.
Right. So but she's laying the groundwork of what racism is.
Yeah.
Or race specifically. Yeah. So anyway.
I mean, she talks about the birth of a nation. Griffith's film portrayed African Americans as brutal on page 19. Top of that.
You skipped.
Unless did you have something to say before that?
Well, I had underlined.
Go ahead.
Well, just that many Americans, namely white Americans, think that the race problem has been figured out after the Civil Rights Act. So there's this misconception that we're post-racial.
Yeah.
And then later on she talks about being colorblind, which is more harmful in a lot of ways than being outwardly racist.
Yeah.
And I love the way she explains that. But I liked that she just brought that up right away.
That's on page 16 you're looking at?
Yep, at the top of page 16 in that first paragraph through. Oh, and then I love how she brings on page 17. People are so hungry to believe we're post-racial, but they have no idea. If you're a white person listening to this or wherever, you have no idea about sundown towns, cities where African Americans were not allowed after dark.
Yeah,
and for us, it's the uncertainty with driving through the South.
Yeah.
When we drove across country from Illinois here, we don't stop certain places, y'all.
Yeah.
Especially not at night.
Yeah.
You don't stay certain towns. You rather pray in the spirit and have the windows down and drive on through to get you somewhere. And that's the reality of being black in America. And that's...
Yeah. I would also say, too, that in correlation with sundown towns, it's just like you got to be, for me... When I go into certain spaces, I'm just constantly aware of, is there somebody here that cannot tolerate my blackness right now? Am I safe in where I'm walking? You know, because it might be a store. Remember that time we walked up in Target and the dude was dragging a hatchet knife across a building and walk? You just are always...
That's
not that he was blatant. That's a whole nother story. But essentially,
you about to take it down a whole other path.
I know. But essentially, you just never know what you're going to walk into as black people and what type of anger you're going to encounter with white people. And so you're always, Baby Byrne is moving around over here.
A lot.
Moving around. Bless his or her heart. Bless his or her heart. We're trying to do a book club, Baby Byrne. But yeah, just commentating off the sundown towns, cities where African Americans were not allowed after dark. That's a harsh reality that I think a lot of us still feel, like especially when Trump was in power. That's the best way I can describe it. He was literally in power. I just didn't feel comfortable being out. Like when they
not in Arizona?
No, I really didn't. And to be honest too, even when they started putting in curfews, even for the pandemic, it's like I better not be out.
Black people were not out in these streets because
the curfew is 7. I'm gonna be at home at 6 o'clock. 6
inside with the doors locked.
I'm not playing with police and curfews.
Yes. And whatever your feelings are on guns or whatever, you start to think, do I need to strap?
I know.
Like I know people going, but that's not the conversation today.
Right.
But these are the things we had to start really thinking about because although it's not illegal for us to be anywhere after sundown or in certain places, the sentiment is still there. The feelings are still there.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, black people don't go certain places in the South after a certain time of day. You just don't.
Yeah.
You just don't.
Yeah. So that's a reality of a lived experience of a person of color.
Yep.
That if you didn't know, now you know.
Now you know. So I just wanted to highlight those two parts before you went to page 19.
Yeah. So anything from page 18, when she starts talking about exploding the post-racial myth, leading into page 19, I'll give you space to. I think you have something before I highlight it. Under the birth of a nation, do you have anything there?
Yeah. Well. God, so this blockbuster film, you guys, power gonna power, white people gonna white.
Yeah.
Like race supremacy gonna supreme.
Yeah.
These people you're gonna continue to do it. And okay, so let me just see where I'm up at the top where it says released in 1915. It was the nation's first blockbuster, A Birth of a Nation, and continues. Sorry, I was about to yell. Continues to be studied in film schools as a major turning point in cinematography, storytelling, and editing. So this film, this film, which glorifies African Americans, or falsely narrates African Americans as brutal savages prone to rape, simple-mindedness, and general debunkery. In contrast, it depicts the Ku Klux Klan, that is the KKK, you heard that right, as saviors to restore order to the Reconstruction South and saved the helpless white minority. So minority.
Yeah.
Let's just circle that word continues to be studied in film schools. And so what I wrote is this fact alone, we can stop here, should be alarming.
Yeah.
You should be alarmed. You should be alarmed.
Yeah.
There should be rage that comes up into you, because to those, especially those claiming to be allies, this fact should be alarming that this is studied.
Yeah, that's still to this day.
Schools are schools are systems that are literally training children for the next generations. This is not by mistake. It's not by mistake that you don't read none of this in any history book. I've been in education for the last 10 plus years.
Yeah.
They're not teaching this stuff.
What? Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm just saying, like, they're breeding racist people. The schools is a system that's breeding racist people, not by overtly converting people as they did in Germany and under Hitler, but by subvertly, not even by omitting the actual history of this nation and the things like this. They are subvertly turning little hearts and minds.
Yeah, because I think what America does intentionally, but what we don't intentionally observe is the continuous implications that happen when subconscious messages are being planted into people's minds. So the subconscious message is that black people need to get out. White people are supreme. White people have power. And if you're not white, you must die, essentially, because the white people need to be saved from blackness.
If you're not white, you're barbaric.
Yeah.
There's that goes into all of that.
Yeah, that is the message of the birth of a nation. So when it's studied for other reasons, although it's studied for other reasons, the reasons for which it was made is also planted in the hearts and minds of the people that are studying it, consciously or subconsciously. Right. And also, when things aren't addressed or named, it becomes approved of.
It's more dangerous. It's more dangerous.
Correct.
That was Martin Luther's whole quote about, he came to the conclusion that the hardest part in the fight for equality for black people, and I'm paraphrasing his quote, was not the outward Ku Klux Klan.
Yes.
It was the white moderate that said, hold on, now wait a minute.
Is that really what they're trying to do?
That is harmful.
Is that really what they're trying to say?
So
I don't know.
Microaggressions, these subconscious, subvert messages are more dangerous to black and brown bodies because it tricks itself.
Yeah.
It tricks itself into thinking, well, I'm not racist. I'm not. I just think that they need to work a little harder. Like, if they worked harder, they wouldn't be in these situations. Sweetie, that's a racist thought.
So,
ma'am,
let me check the camera real quick, and then I have a comment.
Erin's going to be checking this camera for the first 5 or 6 episodes, y'all.
It's still going. We good. Well, last time it stopped
Cut out
5 minutes, before it was done. So what is like brewing kind of in my heart as like a theme that I'm seeing when it comes to this topic of racial reconciliation, white supremacy, all of those things. If you don't name the oppression, we probably even talked on this last time, but I'm just going to keep saying it because it's the truth.
Keep saying it.
Is that when you are unwilling to name something, it continues. Oppressed people must again and again and again and again name the oppression that they're experiencing, because one, it separates themselves from the oppression happening to them. So they don't, now they see it as an action and not who they are as an identity. Two, it forces the oppressor to acknowledge their oppressive behavior,
right,
and gives them a choice to decide if I'm going to continue,
right,
or if I'm going to
renounce. And now we know who you are.
Exactly.
And that says more about you than me.
Exactly.
And that's why even on, sorry, did you finish your thought?
You can go ahead.
Even online, so I posted something about MLK Day and just was like, you know, I said what I said.
Yeah.
Didn't stutter.
Yeah.
Just about like, miss me.
Yeah.
Miss me with the false reverence, because if you're not acting, there is like, there's, it means nothing to put a black screen on your social media or to say, I believe in MLK, because 75% of people upon his death did not believe in what he was doing.
Yeah.
So let's not miss me with that false reverence, or like, oh yeah, would you really would have been on the right side of history? So anyway, normally I just try to ignore people on, I don't like to really get into things because I get into things.
Yeah.
So I have to protect my own peace. But someone decided to comment, a white male decided to comment on my post, I believe in MLK and all he stood for, but I don't like this narrative of white people, you know, and how they, you know,
somebody said that on your
yeah,
thing?
their supposed privilege is the cause of all this. I know. And I was like, and I let it be. Right, I let it be because of the relationship they like. It's an interesting. Oh, this is only for Patreon.
Yeah.
That's fine. It was Stefan's cousin.
Oh, okay.
From Ireland, from Scotland.
We got grace for you, but you're gonna have to come up.
But right, because he's not from here. But I had to I said I let it be, and I said I need to correct you because people are coming across this, and that I think is to your point.
Yes.
Of like, we have to call it out. I said so. Let me help you, because it isn't a supposed privilege. It's an actual, and those are facts.
Yes.
And here in America, those are the facts that this nation was actually built upon.
Yes.
So we're not talking about kumbaya and love and all that kind of stuff until we can acknowledge the inequality and the inequity that has plagued black and brown people since the foundation of this very nation. Now, I'm not quite sure how they do it over in Scotland.
Yeah.
So I'm giving you a little bit of grace. But don't try to tell me how it is over here in America and what MLK, you know, he's like, I loved MLK and what he stood for, but I don't agree with the divisiveness of this kind. I'm like, the thing that MLK stood for by its very nature was divisive because equality was never a foundation of this country.
Yeah.
It was never a priority for this country.
And that is the privilege that white people have by choosing what part of history they'll listen to and what part of history they'll turn their eye from. Because you got to have the whole story to have context of truth and to see how it really has affected people.
I'm just like, people want to make MLK to be this like
loving.
He was like, he was hated. He was murdered. He was assassinated.
Literally.
He was assassinated.
Literally.
Nobody liked him.
Yeah.
So the way you feel about Colin Kaepernick is the way you would have felt about MLK.
Yeah.
Miss me with the false reverence.
Yeah.
Miss me.
Go ahead, Ericka. Go ahead and tell the truth. Okay.
Sorry, y'all. I get hyped about this stuff, but this is what.
Truth
if you want to see two black women talk about it, right?
Yeah.
We only at this part.
I know.
This is what it is. These are the things that we hold on to on a daily, and you're just getting a taste of what it is. So, you know.
That's
Thanks
good,
for joining
Ericka.
the conversation.
That's good. She then continues on to talk about George Zimmerman and the shooting death of Trayvon Martin.
All of these beautiful
all these
black
different
and
people,
brown
like
bodies.
hundreds of people that have died over the years.
Can we take a moment just for their lives? I could barely even read that part.
Yeah.
I was like, Go ahead, because I see we highlighted the same part at the top.
Oh, really? So going at the top of page 21, she writes, the 21st century, however, brought two major technological shifts that changed public reaction: smartphones and social media. Here's an argument that several white people, especially that come from white evangelical spaces that literally want to deny the truth of history. This has been happening. This is something that, you know, has it really been like this? It's only by your stance of privilege that you are even able to ask that question.
It's only because you're privileged.
Only because you're privileged
you get to not even understand.
That you get to present the question, has it always been this way?
And that presenting of a question, especially to a black and brown body, is in and of itself so disrespectful.
Yeah.
And I know I talked about this last time, I think.
Go ahead. You can say it again.
But you have to understand that even you fixing your lips to be able to present the question, but has this really been happening? It's
disrespectful.
So out of pocket.
It's so disrespectful.
It's so disrespectful.
It's so disrespectful.
To all of these lives, to our lives, to people's, the millions of unnamed black people that we don't even know their names because we didn't have smartphones and social media.
Yeah.
That's what you have to understand. So don't even fix your lips to say it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's a lot, but
yeah,
it literally changed the game, not because it hasn't been happening, but now you can't lie about it anymore. It's like literally blatantly in your face. But what's interesting about white supremacy is even when they're watching the video, it continues to deny the truth of what it's seeing.
A man literally was choked for, was it 9 minutes
and
straight?
They're like, well,
he shouldn't have. They aren't sure?
Here's the thing, because this is
sure?
what white supremacy does. It will go to any means necessary to protect itself,
to protect
whiteness, which is money and power. That is whiteness, and that is what it's protecting.
And you should be if you have any reservations with, even if you don't say it, but in your heart, out of all of these black bodies that have been murdered for public viewing, if there was any point where you were like, well, she didn't check it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, check it, because there was a life that was lost, and there is nothing anyone can do to have and I'm talking specifically about the police officers that have taken a lot of these people's lives.
Yeah.
There is nothing anyone can do that would warrant a public servant that we pay to kill, maim, hurt. Like, there's nothing anyone can do.
Yeah.
These are public servants that we pay.
Yeah. And you brought up an interesting point. I don't remember what we were talking about, but we were talking about something, and then you explained this is what it means when people care more about white feelings over black lives.
Black bodies.
Yep. So when you present that argument, you are literally caring more about how white people feel versus the black bodies and lives that were actually lost. Let's just step outside of ourselves and observe the context of that conversation. Yep. Like, we're literally talking about how white people feel about being white versus the realities of what black and brown people have been suffering and going through
in their bodies
and day out.
And like you said, their very lives.
Yeah.
So you're comparing a feeling of a white person in this country, in this nation, is higher than the life of a black person. And that is a fact.
That's out of pocket.
It's out of pocket.
Yeah.
And one thing I wrote is, so this shift in our ability to document the inequities, because they've already been happening, right? They've been happening for centuries, since the very foundation of this country. So just the shift has only been in our ability to document it. So because that shift has happened, the narrative has also shifted from black people are exaggerating, which is what people like to say all the time. Well, you guys are just exaggerating. It's not really like that. To now, white people, you're turning a blind eye, which always has happened. But I think now, we as the ones that don't have the power are able to point that out in a more definitive way. And as you said earlier, it becomes more of a conversation of now you're really just turning a blind eye. Not it's less about like, oh, I did it. It's more about like, now
it's a definitive choice.
Exactly. And now we know who you are.
Yeah.
Now we know who you are, because we're able to speak our truth, which we've all been trying to speak our truth, but now we have evidence. And it's sad that it took all these years, but now that we have hard facts, proof, now we present that in the public square, and then we sit back and watch. And a lot of white people are still trying to play the narrative of, well, if they just did, and you're exaggerating, and Well, what that tells us about you, I'm not saying you, but about you, is that now, no, you're you're turning a blind eye. Like you are choosing white feelings.
Yeah.
You're choosing the safety of your whiteness, your comfort over the very life of a human, of an actual human being.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, and we probably talked about this last time.
Out of pocket.
Yeah. I feel like we're going to keep saying, we probably talked about this last time. The more the truth is said, the more it liberates, right? So, and once again, let us not forget that there are also people of color that agree with those narratives as well. Yes. And what that tells us, and I was just telling somebody about this, is that when people of color agree with the narrative of white supremacy and, they just need to work harder because I worked harder and all of this, it becomes very individualized, one, so that's still disrespectful to the larger group of people that have been,
as a whole,
all of that. But also
which is so anti-Christ anyway.
That's a whole thing.
Nother.
But what was I going with that? It's okay. Dang it.
When black people...
So it is also possible for people of color to uphold the pillars of white supremacy. When they have assimilated so far and so long, they've received the benefits of it, and it becomes easier, more profitable for them to uphold the pillar than to actually walk away from it. Those are the people of color that are agreeing with the white supremacy narrative, and there's grace for them because they're in the sunken place and they need to get out.
And hello?
If
you know, you know.
If you know, you know. Also, let us not forget that is a space of survival for people of color. You, in order to survive in white spaces, you have to assimilate.
You have
to assimilate. And what's happening in this deconstruction that's currently happening is people that have assimilated, myself included, now have assimilated. I'm still in white spaces. I still have to operate in white spaces. Granted, I don't have to work in a space where white people aren't aware of their whiteness, right? But I still have to operate in that way. But now I'm aware and I'm operating in a conscious mind of awakened truth instead of blind assimilation, blindness due to assimilation.
And you're no longer someone that a white person will use as an example because white people like to use the one or few black people that they know. Well, they never said anything. Well, they agree with this. Well, and it's like, no, sweetie. You cannot use someone else being in the sunken place and being morphed and raised in whiteness. You cannot use that person as an example to pacify and to put a stamp of approval on your wrong behavior.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
Yeah.
You don't get to use black bodies as a way to justify your racist thoughts and behaviors. It's not okay.
Yeah.
And I don't blame black people a lot of times for that kind of stuff. Now, there's some people that really dig their heels in and then they become very harmful to their own people. But I think that those people initially start from a place of survival because of how they grew up, how they were raised, the cultures in which they were created and like really just, you know what I mean? Like you have to survive and you're in the sunken place.
Yeah.
Right? So there is responsibility, I think, when it gets to a certain point.
Yeah.
But honestly, the responsibility I will continue and always put on white people.
Yeah.
I will put it back to white people. Totally. I do not accept white people that say, well, this black person and look at that example. And then, no.
You know, and what's interesting too, because that's absolutely the truth. That's absolutely the truth. But I just want to name that so that it's not used as an excuse for white people to name that there are people of color in the sunken place.
Absolutely.
But what's interesting is that people of color that are in the sunken place that converse with other people of color that are liberated become it becomes harmful to start to have conversations because, for an example, like in the Be the Bridge group that we have, in some instances, there might be some people of color that haven't yet awakened to certain truths. Okay. So they speak more so along the theological framework of white supremacy, which is harmful then to people of color that are in that same. It's quite interesting. And not just to put it out there as an example of just the realities of so many people being in different spaces and places on their own journey of learning. And if you want to be in a liberated space as a person of color, you need to get around other free, liberated people of color. Like you have to. And you can't just rely on the fact that they're a person of color because they might be in a different space and they're learning.
Exactly.
And I think it's just it was really interesting for me to observe that. Not only personally, but as an observation of another person in the group. It's like, wow, we all aren't in the same space.
No, but that was by design.
Yeah.
We were stolen from our land and brought to a world in which they wanted to completely strip us of our culture and our understanding to help them uphold whiteness.
Yeah.
They wanted us to help them uphold whiteness.
Yeah.
And that is what all the institutions were built around. That's what the education system was built around. That's what the political system was built around. That was what the entertainment system was built around, was creating everyone to uphold whiteness.
Yeah.
And that was why I said at the beginning, America wants so desperately to remove itself from the Hitlers and the Germanys when it was in that Hitler era. But we cannot, because we have done the same thing. America has done the same thing. It has sought at every corner to uphold whiteness in a way that strips every other people group of everything they have. If I love what she says, I don't know if we'll get to it, but she said, if you're white, you're upheld pretty much. You are the top of the top. Blackness means that you are for like that you equal slavery, right? You can become enslaved. That was what it meant when race was constructed.
Right.
Which is what is very interesting about this book as well. So when race was constructed, white for privilege, blackness means that you can become enslaved, and indigenous means that you can become eradicated. That's what it literally meant.
Wow.
That's why they created it. That was the foundation of this country from the get.
Yeah.
And I will say it to the cows come home, to anyone that tries to tell me otherwise, that America was founded on Christian. America was founded on. America was founded on white supremacy. Yes. White patriotism, the patriotism in that sense, and founded upon white evangelicalism, which I think is very harmful. I have a hard time with the word Christianity. I'm just gonna be honest about that. I don't really know where I land on that. Some people are like, well, we can reclaim that word.
It's a very grievous word. I'm just because of the historical context of the word.
Right.
It's grievous.
So I'm like, I give it to you. Yes, America was founded by Christians, white evangelicalism. And look what white evangelicalism did. It literally dehumanized millions of people groups. It enslaved an entire people group for its own profit, and it also murdered millions of people that already owned this land. Okay,
it's a whole lot.
It's a lot to.
But that's what I appreciate going to your point. That's what I appreciate about what she's doing to set up this conversation of racism is not about feelings or friendship. She's trying to give historical context to how it started, where it's been, what it looks like today, like all of these different things. And there's so much that she mentions in here. Yeah. We have up until page 42, so we can skip around too if there's something like that really stuck out to you. One thing that I will mention.
So many good things. Where are you page?
I'm gonna read from page 31.
Oh, you're skipping.
I'm skipping around a little bit.
You're skipping.
Because there's so much.
Stuff.
I know. Okay. You can always go back. We can always go back. But page 31, top of it, she writes, still, the concept that we now know as race was not fully formed until the advent of the Atlantic slave trade. It was in the dungeons of the slave ports on the West African coast and in the bowels of the slave ships that the Fante, Igbo, Yoruba, Mandinka, and Wolof became simply black, a term that signaled not just skin color and geographic origin, but also enslavability.
That's what I was just saying.
Yeah.
It means you're enslavable.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, and my thing is, why don't they teach this in history books?
Yeah, because, it exposes what whiteness and white supremacy is when we can't do that if we're going to protect it.
Yep. And I see you underlined the next little bit that I underlined as well.
Yep. And this is exactly what you just said. Being white meant that you were free. Being black meant that you were enslavable. And being indigenous meant that you were extinguishable.
This is the legacy of the U.S. of A.
Wow. Throughout U.S. history, the task of every immigrant group has been to prove themselves not black. Wow.
And therefore not enslavable.
Jesus. Do you understand
what that means for a black body?
Yes.
That every person that comes to this country, their one American dream is to not be black.
Man. And ma'am, let me tell you this too. And that is the goal of assimilation of Black Americans.
Yes.
I assimilate because I don't want to be seen as Black. I'm going to try to be seen as white as possible, which is why you get Black people that say, well, I want to talk white, or like why they try to act white, dress white.
Or people that just end up that way because they were raised in whiteness.
Yes. It is a subconscious or conscious, intentional or unintentional effort to rid people of who they are and their culture and their identities and where they come from to be white.
Ooh, this baby is really moving. And I just want to say this one thing for all these people that have adopted Black babies.
Oh man, that's a whole thing. Keep going.
I will say this because it's another conversation for another day, but I will say this. You have a great responsibility to teach these babies about their Blackness. And if you don't, you have done a grave disservice. And you have aided in them being, again, stripped away from something that is the core of who they are.
Yeah.
And now being put into this world in which they cannot stand in the truth of their Blackness, and they themselves have become anti-Black simply because they were raised in a family that never acknowledged. You don't have to be outwardly racist to be harmful to a Black body.
Yeah.
If you don't give them space to be Black, and if you've adopted a Black person and you're not Black, if you have not gone out of your way to educate them, to make sure that their hair is what it should be, you have done a grave and dangerous thing, and you should be ashamed.
So tell the truth. We'll get to that later in the book.
You see it all of the time.
We'll get to it later in the book, but I'm telling you, telling the truth starts the healing process of liberation and freedom. So tell the truth.
And that's where I'm at.
She said you should be ashamed.
That's why
Go
I feel
ahead,
like
tell the truth.
I think a lot of people, even my own mother, is like, "Ooh, you're a little strong, Ericka." But I feel like I'm reclaiming myself. Like this is me. You're literally watching a Black woman reclaim herself.
Get your dignity back.
And getting my dignity back in a lot of different ways. So yes, it's going to be hard. It's going to feel, and it's not even harsh, but the world would have it seem like angry Black woman. She's just angry. She's just hard. I'm just speaking what I have felt for my entire life and been unable to say because of the white spaces that I have grown up in.
Yeah.
And so I'm reclaiming myself and getting my dignity back. And you're watching that. And if it makes you uncomfortable, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry.
You
right?
don't need to be apologized here.
Right.
This is our space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that it gives you an opportunity to experience a fraction of what I've experienced my entire life.
Yeah. Because there's both white people and people of color watching this. There's all different types of people in this Patreon.
And if you are a person of color, I hope to God that it encourages you to stand up in your color, wherever that is, in your heritage, and to speak your truth.
Yeah. This is another thing I'll say. So remember when I joined, there was maybe in the middle of the pandemic, there was a Indigenous women's virtual tea that I joined on Facebook. And that was my first time actually sitting down with a majority of Indigenous women and just hearing them. We were talking about decolonization, which is really interesting. Indigenous people know about colonization, obviously, right? They were the first ones here. They were whose land was colonized, right?
Let's take a moment and just give for the land that we're standing on.
Yeah.
My God.
These
Indigenous people, they are owed so much. We acknowledge it. Go ahead and say the thing. Say it.
A moment of silence here. And what they taught me on this virtual tea that I was a part of, I'll never forget it. She said, government officials and leaders who don't want you talking about race oftentimes will get people distracted with all these other types of conversations. But what it really boils down to is it's about land and resources. It's about land and resources, which also can be talked about as money and power, which we've talked about.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
It's about land and resources.
Which is money and power.
We can get caught up in all these other side conversations, but it always boils down to land and resources. When she said that, I was like, wow.
These Indigenous people are owed so much.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Stole their land and then used our bodies to build on the land. Yeah. Reparations are coming. I'm saying this right now. Reparations are coming for my indigenous brothers and sisters and for my black brothers and sisters. Let me say something real quick.
Go ahead. And then I'm going to move to page 34, so wherever you're at.
Oh my gosh.
I know, I'm just trying to.
Whole bunch.
I know, but it's so much and we can't go on forever.
No. Well, let me see here. So another thing she's talking about, like a race and how it was started. So Erin was talking about the term black. Oof. So if you go back to page 30, and it talks about this first meeting of Europeans, light-skinned, and then Africans, more dark-skinned people. And it just says right here in the middle of the page, if the two groups had met on terms of equal power, it's always going to be about equality.
Yeah.
If we had truly met on the terms of equal power, the meaning ascribed to the differences in skin color might not have been very significant. Unfortunately, it was a rigged encounter from the get.
Yeah.
She says beginning, but I just replaced it with get.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, you can read forward into why and stuff, but I just want to acknowledge that bit. It's like, if it was ever equal, it wouldn't have been, this whole like black and white thing wouldn't be as deep as it was, but it was a rigged encounter from the beginning. Wow. And that is why people think, well, white equals better because we had these resources and you did that. It's not even about that. If it had been on even playing fields.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else on that?
No, not on that. I'll find, because I did want to go back, but go ahead to where you were.
So I'm on page 34, the new default colorblind racism. And maybe I'll figure out a more structured way to kind of get through this. It's just a lot of material, and I want us to talk about what stuck out to us. But I'm on page 34, the new default colorblind racism. It reads, in Racism Without Racist, Eduardo Bonilla Silva argues that colorblindness became the dominant U.S. racial ideology following the civil rights movement. And there's an excerpt from that author. Towards the middle, going on to page 35, it reads, and the beauty of this new ideology is that it aids in the maintenance of white privilege without fanfare. Let me say that again. Color blindness aids in the maintenance of white privilege without fanfare, without naming those who it subjects and those who it rewards.
And I'll continue because I underline this next part. Thus, whites enunciate positions that safeguard their own racial interest without sounding racist.
Yeah.
Shielded by color blindness, whites can express resentment towards minorities by criticizing their morality, values, work ethic, and even claim to be victims of reverse racism.
Yeah.
If I hear somebody that's reverse,
So this is why this was so liberating for me, because when I first read this, I was like, I knew it. I just didn't have the language for it. It's like, that's what was happening. It was literally color blindness giving you almost like this green card of being able to protect yourself while also trying to have a conversation about racism without naming your whiteness and what it actually means.
Because if you go back to 34 in that excerpt, right in the middle of that page, so instead of being outwardly racist and in proclaiming that God placed minorities in the world to serve, right? I'm paraphrasing that last little part. It suggests that minorities are behind because they did not work hard enough. Yeah. Instead of viewing interracial marriage, which I am a part, plug for Interracial Chronicles.
There's an episode coming out.
Right? As wrong on a straight racial bias, it regards it as problematic because of the concerns over the children, the location, the extra burden it places on the couples. So that's what when we talked about before, it being more dangerous than outward, because we know how to deal with outward racism in a certain sense, right? Yeah. But this sort of like below the level, it's because they didn't work hard. Like you're talking about every other thing but what it actually is, which is still the upholding of white bodies and thoughts and feelings. It's not even white bodies, white feelings over black and brown bodies and lives.
Yep.
This is what we're talking about.
Put those glasses up. Man, there's just so much. There's so much. Like when she goes on to say on page 35, she starts talking about the 4 frames of colorblind racism.
Oh, yeah.
Abstract liberalism, liberal humanism, naturalization, cultural racism. Like, I highlighted so much. Trying to pick which to talk about. Like, there's just so much here. And it's very robust. Like Kristen Chase would say that it's like, it's so, she comes with like, with her game face on. Dr. Chanequa Barnes is not here to play.
She's here. If you thought I didn't have facts to support this, or as we say in the Black community, if you thought I didn't have receipts, baby, I've been saving all of my receipts. And here they are before I get into telling you why racism is not about feelings of friendship. She's laying out all the receipts in chronological order.
Yeah.
We have been.
Man. If I could, what's the first frame here? The first frame, abstract liberalism. Rather, it refers to liberal humanism, the core philosophy undergirding
You didn't tell us what page you're on.
Sorry, page 35.
If she's going to skip around, you got to tell us.
I know.
Otherwise, go in order. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So middle of page 35, abstract liberalism then dismisses the reality of racism or the need for corrective action to ameliorate racial inequality by using the language of equal opportunity, meritocracy, the idea that success is a result of individual merit, government non-intervention, the idea that social change should result from voluntary action and not from governmental legislation or action, and individual choice.
This is the core of the conservative party in America. These are the core beliefs.
Yeah, I would definitely say that for sure. This is a lot of this I was subconsciously taught in white evangelical church spaces.
Absolutely.
For sure. Like this was mold. This is the
blueprint right here.
Yeah, this is for sure it. The second frame, naturalization, they occur naturally, justifies and dismisses racial disparities by claiming that they occur naturally rather than as a result of intentional practices and policies of exclusion.
It's been intentional, and these policies of exclusion, this was not by mistake. This was crafted.
Yeah.
This has been handcrafted. Even in Chicago, where we're from, something as simple as how they built the roads. They literally built the roads to cut off Black and brown communities from resources.
Yeah. It's all to protect land and resources, money and power.
So don't like, south side of Chicago. They built the city to be that. Yeah. They built it to be that so that people would have a hard time getting resources.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord.
Second frame, naturalization. We just talked about that. This frame is often employed by whites to rationalize school and neighborhood segregation.
What we're just talking about.
Yep. The third frame, moving on to page 36, top of page 36. The third frame, cultural racism, meaning it basically means it's not your own fault, or it's your own fault, explains racial disparities as resulting from cultural differences between racial and ethnic groups. It is a form of blaming the victim in which racial disparities are acknowledged as real, but are attributed to presumed cultural characteristics of racial ethnic minorities themselves.
This is the dying point, or I would say 75% of white evangelicals and white people.
Yeah.
Now, 7%, like, I just threw that out there, y'all.
Yeah,
it's just me.
Yeah.
But this is a held fast, either outspoken or internal point of people is blaming the victim. That is the response that we saw from the majority of these videos that came out from a man. I didn't even watch the video because
me neither. Yeah.
We shouldn't have to do that. But from a man being murdered for, was it 8 or 9 minutes?
Yeah.
Straight on camera. This was the response. People searched for ways to blame
racism.
him. To blame him for, he shouldn't have been. And if he had, it.
Yeah. And she goes on saying that same paragraph later on, racial disparities exist and are a cause for concern, but they result from the behavior and attitudes of people of color. This is the ideology of cultural racism, not from racist policies, practices, and experiences. This frame is particularly pernicious in that it is one of the ethnic minorities themselves can easily internalize.
This is what you were talking about.
Yep.
So when you see black people or brown people that are claiming this same truth, this is what's happened.
Yeah.
We've internalized the message.
Yes.
We've internalized the message. And that is why I will always put the responsibility back on the majority and the people with power, which in this country are white people.
Yeah.
Because black people have been handcrafted to internalize these harmful messages.
Yeah.
So then when they stand up and speak that truth, it is dangerous. And I think when it gets to a certain point, there is a level of responsibility that they have. But I put 99.9% of the responsibility back on people with power.
Yeah.
Because this is why it happens. This is how it happens. That's why you're like, well, there's a black person I know that says all this stuff, and there's a black person I know that doesn't believe this stuff. That is why. It's because they have been, these things have been internalized.
Yeah.
And it's harmful.
I don't know when the camera stops. I think it's like every 15 minutes. I'm trying to figure out how
It stopped?
No, it stopped it before, but I just did it again so it would just continue through. I'm not explaining
There's some
it right.
setting.
I know. I haven't figured out the setting, so that's why I keep getting up. I know I told you that, but I'm just trying to. You know what? We're figuring it out. This is the second episode. We'll figure it out. Okay. But I want to go into the fourth frame, minimization of racism. Simply posits? What is that word?
Posits.
Posits? Am I looking at it weird?
I don't know.
Simply poses? I don't know.
Posits?
Simply posits that racial discrimination, maybe that I just don't use that word enough to know that's okay. Simply posits that racial discrimination is a phenomenon of the past and no longer impacts the lives and opportunities of ethnic minorities.
Wrong.
Meaning, minimization of racism is basically trying to tell you and come to the belief that it's not real. Later on, she says, with each new incident that garners national attention, many white Americans resort to bad apple logic, refusing to believe that the repeated violence is a symptom of a systemic problem and instead attributing it to the isolated behavior of a few bad police officers. This frame is also evoked when people claim that racist attitudes, beliefs, and behavior belong only to evil white people.
No.
Wow.
A lot of good white people.
Man.
This is the heaviness that we have to carry as black and brown people in America.
It's navigating these four things. Like these four frames of colorblindness.
The toxicity in navigating these four
you
colorblind.
literally have to have conversations with people that believe in cultural racism or believe in minimization of racism or believe in abstract liberalism or believe in naturalization. You're literally trying to work with, go to school with, live with, talk with people that believe these things, and what does it do to your
body?
Yes.
And your body and your brain and your body and your emotions, your soul feels it and it knows that it's not right, but we are not equipped with the language to explain it. And then therefore we're shut down because white people who are often more educated than we are, because again, the systems are able to articulate themselves in a way where it would seem that they are correct when they are not. And our black bodies attest to this.
You better tell the truth.
But we are put into a world where we feel all these things, but we are not equipped with language to say, no, you are wrong.
Ericka, I cannot, once again, telling the truth, the power of being able to name something and tell the truth, which is why
Thank you for your book, doctor.
Thank you, Jesus. Because which is why, if you think about it, why it was so liberating for black people and people of color to learn to read and write.
Yes.
Because to name something is to separate yourself from it and to reclaim your identity and dignity, your identity and dignity that was stripped from you by not being able to have the language to explain what's happening.
And then to put the responsibility on white people to say who they are.
Yes.
Because you can hide in the shadows of ignorance. When the person that you are, the people group that you are, blaming or talking about don't have the language and they don't have the knowledge to be able to defend themselves, you can hide behind that. But as soon as they gain the knowledge and the ability to say no and to actually put it out into the marketplace of ideas, then you have to say who you are. Yeah. And then we see who you are. Yeah. And it's like, well,
that's powerful, Ericka.
Karen?
That is so powerful. Okay.
That right there, I think that's enough. Yeah. You have to leave people with that. Yeah. Because you need to go and you need to pay some black person. Yeah. Just send them flowers, send them a card, send them something, because the fact that black and brown people, and if you're black and brown listening to this, we see you and we acknowledge you. The work that you have had to do your entire life to navigate these 4 color blindness pillars that are in America is outrageous. It's it's outrageous, and that kind of work is astronomical. No white person could ever imagine the amount of mental and emotional stamina and work we have to do to navigate these spaces. Yeah. Yeah. Woo, y'all. That's powerful. That right there is like, that's what we've been feeling. So I'm really thankful to Dr. Chanequa Walker Barnes for giving language, because these are the things that we go through on a regular.
I'm telling you, I promise you, this is why this book was the best book I read last year, because it gave me language. It gives you language. And when you have language, you have power. You have dignity restored. So we leave you with that. Week 2. I know we ended on like page 39. Yeah. The reading was page 42. So we'll catch up.
You went over the 4.
Did I?
Yeah, you hit all the 4 pillars. Okay, that's pretty much what she was talking about.
And recapping towards the last couple.
And then, like you said, there are things that stuck out to us, you know? Yeah. You can write, I don't know how it is on Patreon if there's comments. You can write in the comments what stuck out to you.
You can. That's how it works. And any feedback you have on your end as you're consuming this that might be helpful, always have open ears for improvement there.
I'm ready on page 43. Racism is about white supremacy, period.
Period, poo.
Period. Point blank.
Period, poo. Period. Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Chicken grease.